We can also have some rule supports to help kids understand what the rules are. And there are some extra rules right now: masks, hand sanitizer, you can't go here, you can go there, you have to walk in this direction and not that direction. We can use visuals, and there are lots more visuals out in the world right now to help us with this. I was in Starbucks yesterday. There's all these visuals on the floor that tell people which direction to walk and where to stand. And that's what I'm talking about here in terms of rule supports. What are some visuals that let us know what the rules are? So I made this once for a child who liked to go hiking on the weekends, but he wanted to go hiking every weekend, even if it was pouring rain, and he would get upset when his family told him no. And so we developed it's raining, no hiking, it's sunny, you can go hiking visual. And in the morning, his parents would just set out the visual that was appropriate to that situation so that he knew. It wasn't just about a no, it was, oh, it's raining, so we're not going. Okay, I'm not thrilled about it, but I got it now. I understand what the rule is. In schools, right, we often have this like waiting in line set of rules. You've got to keep your hands at your side, you have to be quiet. And again, providing a visual so that kids know what those rules are, that can be really helpful. The universal no symbol. Okay, now kids aren't born knowing what this means. You are going to have to teach them what it means, but you can use the universal no symbol to show when some things are not available. So maybe now is not the time for computer or iPad or TV. Maybe you're trying to insert maybe a little bit of time during the day when they're not on electronics. And so you can put a universal no symbol on the symbol for electronics or on the electronics themselves. And here's my trick for universal no symbols. If you go to the office store, you can get overhead paper. So it's clear paper that's for the old-fashioned overhead projectors, and they go in your printer. And so what I do is I print a whole bunch of these on clear overhead paper, cut them out, use my sticky note glue stick, and put sticky note glue stick on the back of those things. And now I have these clear no symbols that I can stick onto things, and it won't damage anything. So I can either stick it onto a symbol to show that, no, that's not an option right now, or I can stick it on an actual thing to show, no, that's not an option right now, so you can't have that right now. So it's providing that information about, what is and is not available. We can also use visuals for choice boards. So lots of times it's about what can you do right now? And kids don't always know what they can do, especially if there's sort of independent time. It's like you're supposed to play by yourself and occupy yourself. Kids don't know what it is they're supposed to do. So we can provide a choice board that shows them, here are all the activities, and you can choose. You're free to change whenever you want, right? But for the next half hour, it's choice time, go play. And we can teach kids to use a choice board. Go, choose an activity, do that activity until you're tired of it, go back to your choice board, choose something else, go do that activity until you're bored, and continue to just do activities from the choice board. And then I also wanted to introduce you to contingency maps as a way of helping kids understand what happens for, say, an appropriate behavior versus a problematic behavior. And you saw an example of this when we looked at Kieran's case study earlier today. This is really just a visual display that shows the outcomes for different behavior. So they always show some key things. They always show the antecedent for problematic behavior. So for this student, and this comes from a study by Ken Brown, who's a consultant here in the Lower Mainland. This was from his master's thesis, and Pat Miranda was his supervisor. And for this child in this study, finishing a task that then needed to be turned in, that was the antecedent trigger. The problem behavior was this student would just sit and do nothing until prompted to get up and indicate that he was done. So if that happened, didn't turn in his work or say, I'm done, then no, for this kid, there was chocolate, cookie, apple juice, and bizarrely enough, broccoli was a reinforcer. It's like the only kid I know who was reinforced by broccoli, but true enough. So you wouldn't get broccoli if you didn't turn in your work. For some kids, that would be disastrous, but for this kid, apparently, not getting broccoli was a bad thing. Desired behavior, when you're finished your work, go turn it in and say, I'm done, and then you can have a treat, right? And so that was the initial intervention. The visual was put down. And the kid was shown, see if you do this, if you do that, and right away they got behavior change. And this is a kid who otherwise would sit forever and never sort of move on to the next activity. I used a similar kind of approach. I was working with a young girl who was not pleasant in the morning. She didn't wake up on sort of the sunny side of the bed. And she would then often she'd open her eyes and start yelling mean things at her siblings and stuff from her bed before anybody had even interacted with her. She just was not a happy waker-upper. And so we were working on her at least saying nothing if she couldn't be pleasant. And so this was a contingency map that her parents reviewed with her before she fell asleep, and it was on her nightstand in a little holder so that she woke up and it was sort of the first thing she saw. If she speaks kindly or says nothing, saying nothing is absolutely fine, then she's allowed to use her iPad during breakfast, right? Which for that family was fine. Other families are like, I don't want any electronics at the table, but for this family, that was acceptable, so cool. If she said mean things, no iPad when she was having breakfast, right? And so this actually, with a bunch of other strategies, this helped to start to move her in that direction of, maybe not being really pleasant in the morning, but at least not yelling things at everybody that were around her. And then finally, in terms of time-based supports and waiting supports, this is hard for all of us. It's hard for all of us waiting. Right now, we're waiting for the day where we don't have to deal with a pandemic, and nobody really knows how long that's going to be, and none of us feel really good about that. For lots of our kids, simply just waiting for an hour for the thing that they want is equally difficult. So, again, sort of putting ourselves into the shoes of children and understanding where they might be coming from is important. So it's difficult if you don't know when activities will occur, or how long activities are going to last, or when something that you're not particularly fond of will end, or how long you have to wait for something that you really, really want. So we can provide some visual supports to give some of this time-based information. So like I mentioned earlier today, we can put clock faces into schedules to show times, and kids don't actually need to know how to tell time. It's why I suggest having analog clocks around. It's much more challenging for a kid to make a match with a digital clock because they have 59 seconds for 10:00 on their schedule to match 10:00 that's on the clock. And as soon as it's 10:01, they're not the same anymore, okay? And if you don't know how to tell time, 10:01 isn't anything like 10:00, right? But 10 o'clock on an analog clock, even if the hand moves slightly one way or the other, still pretty much looks like your image for 10 o'clock. So it's easier for kids to make that match. So providing those kinds of things and helping kids attend to the actual clock. Oh, look, they're the same. It's time to move on, okay? The time timer. If you're not already familiar with the time timer, this is a great tool. It's an actual clock that you can purchase, or you can get the time timer app, and you set it to show how much time either until an activity starts or how long a person has to wait. And when the red part of the timer disappears, the time is up, right? Waiting is done. Even better is the time tracker. I really like the time tracker clock because it's got a red, yellow, and green zone. And you can either count down from red to green or count up from green to red. And you can set the amount of time at each color to be whatever you want. So if I've got a child who needs to wait for half an hour, I could have red for 25 minutes. And then it goes yellow for 4 minutes. And then in that last minute, it turns green. If I've got a child who's on the iPad right now and they get 20 minutes of iPad time and then they're going to have to transition off and they need a lot of time to sort of prepare for that transition, if they've got 20 minutes total, I might have it set for 13 minutes at green. And then I might have it set for 5 minutes at yellow, okay? And then the last couple minutes at red so that they have that time to sort of go, oh, okay, yeah, I've got to give it up now, okay? So you can count up or down that way. And there's also an app called Stop Go that looks very much like this, that is usually very inexpensive, like a couple of dollars. That's also really useful, okay? There are other time-based apps that are useful. You've got them in your handouts. Viz Timer, Picture Prompt Timer, Time This, all varying timer-based apps that you can use to help kids understand how long they have to wait or how long they have to do something.